All right. Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another live stream. Welcome back. Today, this is going to be a good one. This one is going to be a good one. I'm going to talk about Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin has finally topped, and this is the beginning of a $70,000 Bitcoin. So we'll try to explain to you my reason behind why Bitcoin has topped. We'll talk about expectations. We'll talk about invalidations. We'll talk about some invalidations if Bitcoin gets above a certain level, I'm going to be invalidated. This bearish thesis is going to be invalidated. I will also talk about altcoins. The altcoin market is not looking good. If you know anything about my content, you know that I'm bearish on altcoins. I don't have a reason to be bullish long term. In the short term, there's going to be some positive price action, but I just don't believe that it's going to be sustainable. And because I don't believe it's going to be sustainable, since I'm not a day trader, I don't have a reason to be bullish on this market. So, welcome back to the channel. I hope you guys can hear me very clear, and I hope you can see the chart. If you have any question, feel free to put them in the chat. If you have some altcoins, if you have some equities that you want me to analyze, feel free to put them in the chat, guys. I'm here for you guys. But anyways, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be another good one. Once again, I hope you guys can hear me very clear. I hope you can hear me very clear, and I hope there is not, any technical difficulties. And just in case you are wondering, why should I take you serious? Why should I take your BTC has topped serious? Well, I'm the same person that turned bullish on Bitcoin when BTC was right here. When BTC was right here around $87,000, I turned bullish on Bitcoin and I predicted that we were going to $96,000. And not only did I predict that we were going to $96,000, oh, holy smoke. I do apologize, guys, just in case there's any. Oh man, I didn't realize my YouTube was also playing at the same time. So hopefully, there was not any echoing, but we should be good right now. But anyways, once again, look, welcome back to the channel. Yeah, but just in case you are wondering, why should you take me serious in regards to me calling the BTC has finally topped, and this is the beginning of a $70,000 Bitcoin and potentially lower. I'm the same person that turned bullish on Bitcoin. The moment we broke out when BTC was at $87,000, and I predicted that we were going to $96,000, and I told you from 95,000 to start taking profits because we were in the topping range. Bitcoin was topping. And a couple of days later, when Bitcoin was around $95,000, after 3 days of a pullback, I told you that we need to be a little bit more patient in terms of, coming to a conclusion whether Bitcoin has finally topped. I gave you levels that I was going to be monitoring, and those levels have been broken. All right, the rules, my rules that the things that I was watching are now officially broken. And because of that, I 100% believe that we have finally topped. When everyone else is talking about how this is a healthy pullback, I do not believe this is a healthy pullback. I think we're going lower. But we're gonna talk about properly. We are going to have an honest conversation when it comes to Bitcoin. And I will also, update you guys on altcoins. We've talked about the altcoin market. I am not bullish on altcoins. And the reason I'm not bullish on any of these altcoins, it is simply because, when you zoom out and you go to the higher time frame, remember, we're not looking at dailies, we're not looking at 4 hours. No, we are looking at the higher time frames. We're looking at weekly, we're looking at monthly. So if I'm looking at something like a Dogecoin on the weekly, I don't have a reason to be bullish right here. All right. Now, all right, look, you can make an argument that we are at a place where, we could potentially get some support. But even if we do get support, guys, and we get a bounce, like I wouldn't be bullish past, looking at 18 cents, 20 cents. Now, if the price of Dogecoin can manage to get above 20 cents, like I'll be the first person to be bullish on the project. I'll be the first person, to talk about how bullish the project is and, crazy potential price targets. You look at Jasmy. I mean, why would I be bullish when the weekly looks like this? Why would I be bullish when the monthly looks like this? I gave you guys the range, and this is exactly where we are right now. I told you Jasmy was more likely, coming back into this range right here. And this is exactly where we are right now. I wouldn't want to be bullish on Jasmy when the chart looks like this. This is the monthly. I wouldn't want to be bullish on Jasmy when the weekly looks like this. Absolutely not, guys. Can we go up? Of course. But if we do go up, you more likely get a move like this, or maybe a move like this. And afterwards, you get a move like this. So you tell me, is this bullish? Is this bullish right here? When a couple weeks later, you end up retracing the entire move and put in a new low? Like, is that really bullish? I don't think so. So that to me is the number one reason, I'm really not bullish on this market. Now, if we can get something like this, okay, this is very bullish because this is a Jasmy that is trending up for multiple months. So, you want to make sure that you are extremely careful when it comes to this market. Look, different people are going to analyze the market different, and that is the beauty of the market. If you think this is bullish, if you think, you should be buying the dip right now, by all means, go ahead and buy the dip. Now, for me personally, I wouldn't touch it. All right. And if I was a new investor looking at, something like Jasmy or any of these altcoins, I wouldn't touch it. All right. If you go into the equity market, there's immense opportunities. There are stocks, right, hundred if not thousands, with much, much better setup and where you're more likely to make profits not only in the short term but also in the long term, because TA wise, we are set up correctly. So yeah, let me not waste too much time in the intro and let me jump straight into Bitcoin, and let's talk about, or let me talk about why I believe that we have, officially topped, and why I believe that this is the beginning of, Bitcoin going into $70,000. Now, I also want to be clear, guys. It doesn't mean that just because we are going into the $70,000 range, that you may not see the price of Bitcoin around $91,000 or $92,000. I'm not expecting a straight line into the 70s. No, this is going to be a slow grind. All right, nice, slow and steady. What we want to focus on is the trend of the market. All right, we don't want to focus on the price. Earlier today, the price was around 87,000. A couple hours later, we back above 90,000. So we don't want to focus on the price. What we want to focus on is, the actual trend of Bitcoin. So just give me a second. I am going to ask you, if you are watching me for the very first time, if this is your first time right here, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Of course, if you're watching the live stream, make sure that you hit the like button. And yeah, let's jump into it, okay? So, where do I start? Okay, I'm going to be right here on this daily time frame right here. So let me do this. All right, so this should be good. Bitcoin, $90,000. My belief is that we have finally topped, and this is the beginning of a $70,000 Bitcoin and potentially lower. And let me explain to you why. First and foremost, I believe this is a bear flag right here. I believe this entire range is a flag. And of course, this is the pole right here. Just give me a second. This is the pole right here. And this is the flag right here. So, a bear flag is not a bullish pattern. All right, I've made my case over these last couple weeks on why I believe this was a bear flag. And I also told you to be patient, because in order for this to be a bear flag, we are going to need a breakdown. And that's exactly what we got when the price of Bitcoin yesterday closed below this trend line right here. All right. The moment we closed below $89,000, to me, that confirmed that this was a 100% a bear flag. Now, if you think this is not a bear flag and it is a different pattern, perfectly fine with me. All right. But my belief is that if you look at what a bear flag looks like, all right, this is a bear flag right here. To me, if you pull this picture side to side with the price of Bitcoin, they look very, very, very similar. All right. To me, this right here, all right, looks very similar to this right here. All right. Bear flag. You have a pole, and then you have the actual flag. All right. And in terms of how the market or price tends to behave, you get higher highs and you get higher lows. If you go back to Bitcoin, that's exactly what we get. You get higher highs and then you get higher lows. So very, very similar. So 100%, all right, a bearish pattern. Now, when the price of Bitcoin was around $87,000, some of you guys are probably new here, but if you are not, I talked about this. And if you don't believe me, all I want you to do is, look, just go through some of these updates right here. I'm sure there's a video where it's got to be somewhere on, look, right here, guys. $96,000 is coming. I was literally predicting 96. Look, right here, chat. I was predicting $96,000 when the price of Bitcoin was around $87,000. Look, right here, a big move is coming, right, in 10 to 20 days. All right, BTC was around 87,000. I predicted that we were going to $96,000. So that was right after we got this breakout right here. Now, how did I come up with 96,000? Well, chat, it's very simple. All I did was I take these highs right here, just connect them together, and it gave me a beautiful uptrend. And that uptrend, gave me $96,000 as my target. And also, when I zoom out, I zoomed out and I went to the weekly. And what I said was, Bitcoin likes to come up to retest the 21 weekly moving average. Probably by the time we get to the 21 weekly, the price of Bitcoin is going to be somewhere around $96,000, $97,000, or $98,000. Now, luckily, By the time the price of Bitcoin got to $96,000, the 21 weekly was exactly around $98,000. And I gave you guys multiple updates throughout the entire process. So now that we have finally hit $96,000 and we got this pullback right here, what I did was I kept my eyes on the price of Bitcoin, and I was looking at BTC breaking below $89,000. But not just $89,000, I was also looking at Bitcoin breaking below the 21 daily moving average. To me, those were very, very two important. Those are very, very, important price targets or important levels in terms of, whether the price of Bitcoin continue up or continue down. The 21 EMA, because, if you go back to the last bear market, and what I've done is, throughout this entire breakdown, I am, basically looking at the current Bitcoin structure to, this one right here. So when I was looking at this one, a couple of days ago, this to me was also another bear flag, which looks very similar to exactly what we have right now. The only difference, I guess, would be, actually, there is no difference, exactly the same thing. So I looked at, once Bitcoin lost its 21 EMA, which is this blue line right here, just in case you guys are wondering, did we ever recover? Like, did we ever manage to get back above the 21 EMA? And the answer is no. So I was looking at this, and I was looking at Bitcoin, and I said, hey, I think exactly the same thing could potentially play out. Once Bitcoin loses its 21 EMA at the time around $92,000, which is exactly where we're $91,900 right now. I said, hey, once we lose the 21 EMA, I don't think we are going to reclaim it. I don't think price of Bitcoin will manage to get back above it. And not only that, I also said, okay, if you want to be on the safer side, if you want to play safe, you want to make sure the price doesn't lose $89,000. So why was $89,000 important? Well, $89,000 was our most recent higher low. All right. Once you lose $89,000, you basically have broken a structure. All right, a structure that was established the moment the price of Bitcoin started doing this right here. Right here we ran up, came back. Here we put in a higher low. Ran up again, another pullback. Here we ended up with another higher low. Ran up again, pullback, another higher low. So as you can clearly see, throughout this pullback, this right here, throughout these pullbacks, we were very consistent in terms of, putting in these higher lows. So, taking out a higher low was going to be out of the norm, at least, for the time being. And that wouldn't be good for, this overall structure. So BTC yesterday, I was watching. And what's crazy was that literally towards the end of the daily close, the price of Bitcoin accelerate, all right, with this drop right here. And we ended up closing the day below $89,000. Now, you may be looking at Bitcoin back above 90,000 and you may be wondering, well, since we back above 90,000, wouldn't that mean this was a fake out? I don't think so, guys. All right. This daily candle doesn't really mean anything. To me, this doesn't really mean anything. We may even go back to around $92,000, but I don't think that changes anything. Right now, the only way for me to change my bearish opinion on BTC, we will have to break above $97,000. All right. We will have to break above $97,000. And I don't think we are going to do that. I do not think we are going to do that. So let me kind of walk you through why I don't think we're going to break above $97,000 and why I'm expecting the price of Bitcoin to continue down. First of all, let me kind of talk about how I think this may play out, okay? So If over the next couple of days the price of Bitcoin continues down, all right, we may get something that looks like this. All right, this is a breakdown right here. So we may get something where price goes all the way down to 80,000, and then we come back to retest what was a support will now become a resistance. So maybe we come back towards 89 and $90,000, and then we get rejected. Or, we don't manage to get to 89, 90,000. Maybe we come somewhere around $86,000, and then we get rejected, and then we end up with a drop all the way down into the $70,000 range. I think this is how this may play out over the next couple weeks. Look, how fast we get to $70,000, I'm not really sure. All right, I'm gonna have to be patient. It may take, days. It may take weeks. It may take months. I don't know how this is going to play out, and I don't know. I don't know how fast this is all going to play out. But my outlook is that, we are looking at a Bitcoin that is trading in the $70,000 range sometimes weeks from now. So if we go back to the 4-hour time frame, I can confidently say right now, this is not looking good. Looking at this 4-hour, first of all, look, we had a golden cross in terms of moving averages, all right? So just look, hopefully this is not too much going on for you guys. But this is my 200, this is my 50, this is my 21. So we had a golden cross right here, all right, around 88,000. And I was, looking at it in that lens, that was very bullish for the price. Price of Bitcoin goes from, 88,000 up to $94,000, and we had a pullback. In terms of these two EMAs, the blue line never gave us a death cross, all right? Stayed above the green. Even with this pullback right here, once we reclaimed the 21 EMA around 91,000, we ran all the way up to $96,000. Now, we have a death cross right here. And I can tell you right now, guys, this is not good, all right? We had a death cross right here. Blue line goes below the green line. And let me be very clear. Do you see the gap? And I've talked about this. The gap between the two lines, this is a sign of strength. So since the market is in a downtrend, to me, what this tells me is the bears are in control of Bitcoin right now. All right. The bears are in control of this. Look, like it or not, the bears are in control of this market right now in the short term. All right. Don't get carried away by the price right here, guys. Now let's talk about what BTC might do. We may go up and retest, the 21 EMA around that is $91,100. Or we may even push all the way up, excuse me, and retest the 50 around $92,300. But I think somewhere around here, we are going to get rejected. All right, somewhere around here, we are going to put in a lower high. All right, and we are going to see the price pull back, and we will take out these lows right here, and we will go lower. All right, to me, that will be my prediction, or at least that will be my outlook on Bitcoin. The only way, all right, this outlook is invalidated is if the price of Bitcoin was to break above $93,300. Look, $93,300, or let's just round it up and say $93,400. This is the last lower high on the 4-hour. So the only way in the short term we reverse this downtrend, the price of Bitcoin needs to be up here. All right, maybe I should use the white line because there's too many yellow. All right, let me go like this, okay? Only way, guys, only way we reverse this downtrend, price is got to get above here, man. So what that means is the price of Bitcoin below $93,000, it doesn't matter. All right, it doesn't accomplish anything. All right, the only thing that this is going to do is it just gives you a lower high somewhere around here, and then the next pullback, takes out the lows and price continues down. All right, right now the trend is your, look, I don't want to say the trend is your friend. The trend is your best friend right now. The trend is your best friend, guys. Like there's nothing. All right, let me clean this. Should I clean this up or should I just, there's nothing to be bullish about when it comes to BTC right now. Absolutely not. We are cooked. We are cooked, guys. All right. So to me, that's one way to look at. Another way to look at this is, all right, I take a trend line from here, go from the top, connect it to this top right here, continue working my way down. Do you want to be bullish on Bitcoin? Fine. As long as the price of Bitcoin is below this yellow line right here, let me actually make it white. So that way you can see exactly what I'm looking at. The only way you should be bullish on Bitcoin, guys, is gotta break to the other side of this white line. Other than that, I mean, it is down. All right. We just will continue down. I don't know how this is all going to play out, but you are looking at the price of Bitcoin that will continue down as long as the price is underneath this white line right here. All right. Beautiful, beautiful trend line. Look, this is the equivalent of, I don't know how many of you guys were watching my streams. Remember when BTC was trending right here? All right. And I told you, hey, guys, do not get too excited until we break to the other side of this yellow line. And this is when we got excited. That's exactly what you should be doing on that 4-hour time frame. All right. As long as the price is behind this white line right here, like, you should not be bullish on BTC at all, guys. All right. But for me, the trend is very clear. All right. Above $93,000, we're still bearish. All right. Or, if it's not 93, okay, let's put in a new lower high on this 4-hour. Let's do something like this. Let's come back. And then this time, instead of looking at 93, we start looking at just $90,000. All right. Break above 90,000. And then, maybe we have a reason to be bullish on BTC. All right. But anyways, the 4-hour looks really, really bad. The last time we had a death cross, the last time the 21 EMA dropped below the 50, you got to come all the way back here. Look at right here, chat. Look right here. Death cross around 112,000. We go from 112 all the way down to 80,000. All right. Right here, choppy. I don't really want to count this. Here we're just kind of going sideways. But this is not looking good. Not at all, man. You go down to the lower time. I don't see bullish divergency. I mean, RSI, MACD. I don't see bullish divergencies. I don't see a reason to be bullish, to be very honest with you guys. And not only that, look, we talked about the 200 moving average. Let me get rid of all of that. And I'm going to get rid of this. All right. We talked about the 200 moving average. Guys, we're having a hard time, man. The 200 daily moving average. Let me go to the daily. The 200 daily moving average is right here. All right. Big TC had an amazing rally. But guess what? Did we manage to get above the 200 EMA? Absolutely not. You go back to the beginning of the last bear market, right here, all right? And here we actually managed to get above the 200, but we are talking about a declining 200 daily EMA. If you go back to here, all right, we didn't manage to get above the 200 EMA, and we have a declining 200 daily EMA. So to me, all right, this is not good at all. All right, this is not good at all. And this is the beginning of, back in the $70,000 range. And of course, look, don't get me started when it comes to the weekly. You go to the weekly. This is not looking good, guys. 50 weekly moving average. We are getting rejected by it. All right, we're getting rejected by the 50 weekly moving average. All right, if this week, right? Remember, we got rejected last week. If this is another red weekly candle, all right? If this is another red weekly candle, that could be the beginning of something like this. That could be the beginning of something like this. All right. And what's crazy is if you look at this drop right here, guys, if you measure this entire drop, and then we go from here all the way here. All right. I know you guys are going to be amazed on what target this is going to give us. This gives us, chat, this is a $50,000 Bitcoin. Who's predicting $50,000? All right. Who is out there predicting $50,000 Bitcoin? And where is $50,000? $50,000 is a major support. Look at this. 50,000. Look at this right here. 50,000. Right? This is not looking good. Now, this is more of a long-term outlook. I'm bearish on BTC long-term. And the other part is, I'm on X, and I've seen some, people look at the weekly MACD, all right? And, when you look at the weekly MACD right here, it looks like we are coming towards the end of this pullback, which really is looking like. All right. It looks like here we are basically somewhere around here. Think of it when BTC was around, 82,000 before the run to 126,000. And it also looks like, back here, if you look at the MACD histogram, when BTC was around the $50,000 range before the run up to $110,000. But the difference is, I think this is the difference now. The difference is when this was happening, the price of Bitcoin was above the 50 weekly moving average. When this was happening, the monthly setup, the monthly MACD was still very bullish. But when you look at the monthly MACD right now, chat, this is not good. The monthly MACD told you to get out of Bitcoin back in November of 2025. The monthly MACD in November of 2025 told you to get out of Bitcoin. Like, this is not looking good on the monthly time frame. Remember, the monthly is a bigger time frame. We are talking about something that could potentially last for months and potentially years. The last time we had a sell signal on the monthly, you got to go back to January of 2022. The price of Bitcoin was in the 40s. That was before we dump into the $15,000 range. So it's a lot easier to go to the weekly and say, hey, it looks like the weekly pullback is almost over based on the weekly MACD. But the weekly is not as important as the monthly. The monthly time frame overrides the weekly time frame. So if you're looking at the weekly and you look at the MACD and you are thinking, surely this got to be the end of this pullback. What I want you to also do is the same way you believe in the MACD, I want you to believe in the MACD on the monthly. What I want you to do is I want you to go to the monthly, and if you still have the same bullish outlook based on your weekly time frame, it's perfectly fine with me. Guys, I'm not trying to push a narrative here. I'm not here to do any of that. I may be wrong. I may be right. I don't know what Bitcoin is going to do. What I do know is I'm looking at indicators. I'm looking at price action. And I'm interpreting exactly what's going on based on my best ability. All right? I am reading what's in front of me. This is not, an opinion that I'm coming up with, without anything to back it. I'm looking at every single indicator. And to me, we just don't look good. All right, BTC just not looking good right now. Absolutely not. Okay? I mean, what do you guys want to look at? The Bollinger Bands? You look at the Bollinger Bands. Let's go to the weekly. The Bollinger Bands is bearish right now. All right? You don't want to be bullish on Bitcoin when the price is below this blue line. Right? This blue line is a 20 moving average. Every time price is below that, you want to be bearish on, BTC or whatever the asset is. If we can break above this blue line right now, that is $100,000. Okay, now you can flip bullish. But here, absolutely not, guys. Remember, here, these were pullbacks within, all right, an overall uptrend structure. Yes, just in case you're wondering, well, here, yes, we were bearish and turned bullish the moment we broke above $93,000. But what if the downtrend is sustainable? Well, when the downtrend is sustainable, you have something that looks like this, like the last bear market, where the price of Bitcoin goes from $50,000, because that's when we lost the blue line, all the way down to $15,000. And guess what, guys? There is a retracement. All right, we got a retracement up to the blue line. But when you have a downtrend, the blue line will act as a resistance. All right, here you are going to get rejected. So what that means is, even if Bitcoin was to continue rising, all right, the moment we get to this blue line around $100,000, we are more likely to get rejected. All right, we are more likely to get rejected around $100,000 based on the Bollinger Bands. All right, the blue line rejects us, and then price continues lower. All right, but in my opinion, I think the top is already in. I think this was the rejection. Remember, these are indicators. These are laggers. So when we go back and we see, oh, price did touch the blue line, maybe when this was happening in real time, this blue line was not right here. Maybe this blue line was still somewhere around 50,000, and the price of Bitcoin got to $87,000 to $47,000. And then eventually, since the blue line continues to, move down, because it is literally a moving average, by the time it hits the price, we were already way, way below here, guys. It's the same way, all right, when you look at indicators and price in real time, your indicators are always lagging. All right, always, always lagging. So anyways, I'm looking at Bitcoin, and I think we have already topped. And I do want to apologize. I wasn't planning on, spending 30 minutes talking about Bitcoin topping, but I'm looking at Bitcoin, and it looks like we have already topped. And my prediction is that we are on our way to the $70,000 range. And why do I say 70? Well, because that is where we have a major, major, major support, $74,000. I want to make sure that I am very, very respectful of every single support on the weekly. I'm not saying that we're not going below 70,000, but as of right now, my main target is in the low $70,000 range. And once we get there and we see what price looks like and we see what structure looks like, we can talk about what comes after. But ladies and gentlemen, that is my update on Bitcoin. My belief is that the top is in of 98,000, and this is the beginning of BTC going into the low $70,000 range. Oh man. So hopefully that was helpful, and hopefully I was able to explain why I believe that we have topped, and why I believe that we're going into the $70,000 range. Now, once again, look, I've seen different outlook on BTC. Some, maybe not some, most very bullish, and I respect it because it's technical analysis. We are all going to have different ideas. We are all, look, we're looking at the same charts, but interpretation is different. My interpretation of what I'm seeing right here is really not bullish. Like I don't see how something that looks like this. Remember, I talked about that we might get a golden cross, in terms of these moving averages. Like right here, we had the blue line cross over the green. But to me, this was always going to be a fake out. And as you can see, it turned out to be a fake out. And we bearish again. So it's not looking good. Yeah, it is definitely not looking good. But let's jump into the altcoin market. I can look. I can just stick with Bitcoin if you guys just wanna. Hey, I can stick with Bitcoin. If you just want me to analyze BTC, I'm perfectly fine doing that. But I rather talk about other stuff. So if you guys have some altcoins, I'm okay to analyze them. Like I am here for you guys. So don't be afraid of putting alts in the chat. But yeah, so look, BTC. I mean, this is over, and now it's not just Bitcoin, guys. Look at Ethereum. Like this is not looking good. Oh la la. And just a reminder, if you're watching this, smash the like button, subscribe if you're new to the channel. But here I have, Ethereum as well. Like this is not great. All right, this is not great. Look, I am perfectly fine if I'm wrong on, all of this, but I just can't help it to point out the obvious. So let me kind of talk about Ethereum for maybe 2 minutes, and then we'll, look at other altcoins. All right. So Ethereum looks bad, if you ask me. We have lost a major support. If you put a trend line right here, clearly we have lost the support right here. All right, we had this little triangle a couple, days ago, and we thought, all right, this was breaking out. We thought this was breaking out, but this was a fake out. We got rejected exactly by, just right on the 200 daily moving average, which, this is not something that you want to see. If you go back, and you look at how price tends to behave, below the 200, it's just not great. Here we lost the 200 around, $3,000, and forget about, losing it. Getting rejected by the 200 is one of the worst thing, actually. The last time we got rejected, you gotta go back to, you gotta come all the way back here. Like this is the last time. Maybe not got rejected, broke above it, but turned out to be a fake out. So basically, kind of what we have right now. It's kind of what we are going through right now. So I am looking at Ethereum, and to me, it's another one where I see price going all the way down in the low $2,000 range. You lose $2,000, we can start talking about, like, we will be. I mean, you're looking at $1,400, like that. Yeah, I'm looking at, you start looking at these, these targets down here. So looking at Ethereum right now, let me kind of go to, let's do the 4 hours. So if I'm looking at this, to me, this is like a retest of these two EMAs or somewhere around here. Maybe somewhere around $3,100. But I'm just gonna say it. I think we get rejected. I think we are going to get rejected somewhere around here if we make up here. I think we get rejected, and we get a move down in the low $2,000 range. That is basically my outlook on Ethereum. It's not just Ethereum though. It's a bunch of these altcoins. Solana, Solana right here. This is clearly this is a breakdown. Excuse me. So yeah, this is a breakdown. Again, I see this as a retest of this breakdown. Somewhere around here, probably we get rejected. And my target when it comes to Solana, I am targeting this range. I'm looking at 95 to $78. Basically, look, I'm okay shorting this thing actually. To be very honest with you guys, like this pullback right here to me, once it gets rejected, you jump into a position probably with a stop loss just right above, 135. Making sure the risk is no more than 5 to 10%. So like if I'm looking at here, I think 135, like this is a major, right now this is going to be a major resistance. All right, so something like that. Like we'll have to, you have to be patient though for this to break down, and then, maybe your entry is, I don't know, 128, maybe 127, something like that. But yeah, look, this is not looking good. And then I will talk about this one specific altcoin that looks very interesting, though. I have one that is very interesting. And then you look at Jasmy. I mean, what is here to like about Jasmy? I said, last couple of days when we had this big run right here, I said most likely the top was in and we were going to retrace the entire pump. And that's exact. Look, we are literally halfway into this retracement. So if I'm looking at Jasmy, look, the daily, we've already lost these EMAs right here. So to me, this is not looking good. Probably get some local support around, 0.006, somewhere around here. All right, you might get some support, or even here, looks like we're getting a bounce. But if I go to the lower time, I mean, this is just not great. You can short it. You can short it, and then, your targets is, I mean, you're looking at here. This is the target. So your target is somewhere around here. If you jumping into a short, I don't know, somewhere around there, you're looking at 20% profits, and your losses could be like, I could put my stop loss just right above 0.007. So let's see what that looks like. So this right here, let's say this is an entry, or let's just say somewhere around here, entry. Stop loss above there. Like you looking at 5% loss. Like this is a really good trade right here. Your losses, it's like nothing compared to what the profits, what the profits are if you are right with the trade right here. So yeah, this is, it's not looking good. I'm looking at the 1 hour, this trying to move up. But do we actually make above this range right here? I doubt it, right? Like I doubt we get above, above this range. And actually, to be very honest, I think we could potentially be topping right here. Price, yes, managed to get above the 50, but the setup is very bearish. So here we could potentially be topping. You go to the 4 hour, we're getting rejected by the 21. Look at how many times we've gotten rejected by the 21, guys. Right here, just in case you guys want, you want to see a reference. Here got rejected by the 21. And then if you go back, all right, before this move right here, I mean, look how many times, price was rejected by the 21 EMA. So what that means to me is, 6 out of 10 or maybe 7 out of 10, that trade is going to end up in profits. All right. Remember, as long as your risk is minimized, you are going to be fine. All right. So to me, this looks really, really good. And then, XCN. I want to talk about this one because, I said, hey, guys, just be careful with this thing. It's going to retrace this. We're going to retrace this entire move. Look, this is exactly what we've done. XCN, since this pump right here, guys, you look at the retracement, this is a 50% dump. And I'm going to be very honest with you. Do not get carried away by this little pump right here. Absolutely not. This thing is going way, way lower. All you got to do is go down to the lower time. Look. Nothing goes down in a straight line. But I can promise you right now, most likely, this is the top. Or probably around here, we are topping. XCN, look, shorting it right here to me probably makes sense with a stop loss probably just right up here. All right, so something like this in terms of how we are trading it. You're looking at, let's say this is an entry, stop loss. I mean, this is a big stop loss. But look, I think we top somewhere around here. Let's say you put your stop loss just right above this wick right here. Your target, look, you can target here. This is a 17% move, but I'm going lower. Like, honestly, I am going way, way lower. Probably put my target right here. I'm looking at a 30% move. My stop loss is just right above here. The risk is 6%, profit 30%. Really, really good trade. If I'm right, I'm right. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But who cares? That's exactly how you trade. So every single one of these altcoins, I mean, maybe not every single one of them, but majority of them, they don't look good. Look, I promise you by the end of this weekly candle, like you're looking at, we're probably somewhere around here. This is early, guys. Today is Wednesday. We got a couple more days to go. So I promise you, by the end of this, you're looking at price somewhere around in the 5s, somewhere around in the 4s. And if you say 2 weeks from now, you could potentially be looking at a retracement of this entire pump. All right. This is not analyzing these altcoins from a bearish perspective. Is not hating. It's just looking at what's in front of you and calling exactly how you see it. All right. Unless you want to paint a different narrative. Unless you have a different agenda, all right, that is a completely different ballgame. But what I see when I look at these altcoins is not something that's exciting. All right, let's just put it that way. It's not something that's exciting. Now let me talk about something that looks very interesting. Yes, it has already moved, but Rose looks very, very interesting on the weekly. First of all, this is a bullish divergence right here. If you bring up the RSI and the MACD, you can clearly see throughout this entire dump, the MACD has been rising. RSI has been rising. So when you have price move down, but your other indicators are moving up, that is what we call a bullish divergence. And normally that leads to a bullish breakout in the price. So I am looking at Rose. It's had a big move. All right. It's had a big move, especially today after yesterday's pullback. I believe it's up somewhere around 20-30%. If you go down to the lower time, look, there was a trade right here. Like this was a trade. Now, I'm not really focusing on altcoins in 2026, so I get to miss a bunch of these moves. This was a really good trade. This was a 70% move. Yesterday, we had another pullback right here. All right. This was another big one right here. All right. This was a 40% move. And I'm going to be very honest. This is not the end of what could potentially be coming. If we can close this weekly candle above this yellow line right here, I think we are in for something very shocking. And we could potentially get a move back to around 4 to 5 cents. Like, I would not be surprised if Rose goes all the way up into this range right here. And this, ladies and gentlemen, gives us a move of 100%. Now, how would I play this? First of all, I would like to see a weekly close. Like, I wouldn't want to rush into a trade right now. I would like this weekly to first close. And once we close this weekly candle, then when you go down to like the 4-hour or the 1-hour time frame, then this is where you start looking for entries and you're putting your stop. Look, I will put my stop loss just right below either the 21 or the 50, or just right below the most recent lows. So right now, stop loss, you'll be looking below here. Now, I wouldn't do it right now because the risk is just not worth it. Because here you're risking about almost 30% of your capital. I don't want to do that. All right. I want to wait for this week to close, or maybe you wait for this daily to close. All right. Today's daily close, that will be very substantial. If you can get a positive daily close above, basically 0.02, then you can go down to like even the 15 minutes, and then you can look for some, trading setup. An idea could be, all right, once we break out, or I'm jumping in right here, my stop loss is just right below the 50. So if this is the entry, stop loss below the 50 EMA, that's only a 5% loss. Or you wait for a breakout, stop loss below the 50 EMA, that is only a 7% loss. If you're going after this 100% push, those are trades that make 100% sense. You're risking 5% of your capital, but your profits is, you're talking about doubling your capital. That is, something that you should go after very, very aggressive. So Rose, to me, looks very interesting. I do not want to say anything right now because it is prematurely. All right. I will need to wait for this day to close, or I will look much better a weekly close. But, weekly close, you got to have to wait for a minute. A daily close might be good for now, and then, we'll see where we go from there. But this is one project that I was looking at yesterday, actually, and I really, really like what I saw. Another one is ICP. Look, ICP has got a very identical setup. Bullish divergency on the weekly. All right, you can clearly see the MACD has been rising, RSI has been rising despite price coming down. Now, of course, a lot of more work, guys. If I'm looking at this daily right here, we got rejected by the 200 daily moving average, and of course, the pullback has not been very kind. If I go to the 4-hour, I'm still waiting for a reason to be bullish. This is not one. Look, if you think this is a reason to be bullish because price kind of bounced off the 200 here, and price is basically retesting this trend line that acts as a support, I get it. And actually, I like it, to be honest. But make sure there's a stop loss in place. So stop loss below this 200, that gives you a 5% loss. Right here, you are going after a 10% move. So you basically, risking $1 to make $2. Yeah, I don't mind it at all. But I think the big move comes in if we can go above, 416. Once you go above 416, then I think you could be looking at a move all the way up into this yellow line around $6.80. To me, this would be a really, really good trade. This is basically a 60% profit. And depending on where you put in your stop loss, all right, stop loss could potentially be just right below whatever is the most recent lows. That could be, I mean, who knows, right? That could be maybe if we get a move that looks like this. Maybe if we get a move that looks like this, stop loss could be just right below here. Or, if you want to go below this, I just don't like it. 18% loss, absolutely not. But if we can break above this yellow line, I think there's a trade to be made. All right. Otherwise, you are going to have to be patient. So ICP and Rose, those are two altcoins that I'm looking at right now, and I am, I like what I see. All right. I will be bullish and looking into position if the price of ICP was here, because if we can get back into like the 260, it's a lot easier to trade this because you are very, very close to an invalidation. So even if entry is like 290, you're putting your stop loss below 265, you're looking at some sweet profits after. So altcoins overall, I absolutely don't like it. I don't want to be anywhere near them. But, to each his own, right? If you like it and if you think these altcoins are, beginning to look like what 2021 or 2017 was, by all means, aggressively accumulate and, hopefully, all right, hopefully, we do end up with 20x's, 50x's, or 100x's. As far as I'm concerned, the setup is just not there. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was kind of well, maybe not kind of. That was my update on, altcoins. Maybe not so much of an update because what haven't I talked about, in most of my updates from, recent weeks. I'm very, look, one thing that I'll say about what I've done is I'm very consistent. Like if something doesn't look good, I'm not here the next day flip flopping. I don't come 2 days after flip flopping. No, I am here and I give you exactly what you got from me. The last couple of days, the last couple of weeks, unless I get something else based on the new data that is presented. All right, I'm always 100% going to change my opinion on the market based on new data. Right, when Bitcoin was around 80, even around 87,000, but we were still bearish. I said, hey, nothing has changed. Despite price going from 80,000 to $87,000. You guys may remember that was right here. All right. We are still getting rejected. Nothing has changed. And the reason I said nothing has changed at the time was simply because the price had not broken above this yellow line. The moment we broke above this yellow line, I think it was a day or 2 days later, I came back to you guys and I said, hey guys, look, this time something has finally changed. We broke above a major resistance, something that we weren't able to the last couple of days. And because of that, I am now bullish on BTC, and my prediction is $96,000. So it's exactly the same thing I will do, guys, when it comes to altcoins. If I'm looking at ICP on the weekly, like I wouldn't change my bearish thesis long as the price is below this yellow line. Once you break above this yellow, okay, now there is something to finally talk about, and that is potentially running all the way up into this range, potentially running up into this range. And here you're looking at a potential 100 to 200% run. Chat, give me a second. I'll be right back. Oh, all right. Let me see. Let me look at your chats. All coins. I'm down to see all coins. I mean, look. Hopefully, market turns around. But look, personally, I look at least in the short term. I mean, at least over the next couple months, I just don't see altcoins turning around. You might get one or two bullish altcoins, but it's not the entire altcoin market. All right, that is the problem. Let me take a look at XRP because somebody's asking. I mean, XRP is bearish. I know because I analyze it the last couple of weeks, and I can tell you right now, nothing has changed. Look, XRP, you absolutely can't make this up, guys. We come up to this yellow line, we get rejected. All right, clear. And I think when we were here, I told you guys, XRP has finally, like, the top is in, and we going lower. Yeah, so I believe it's yeah, like 2 weeks ago around here, I told you guys, I think XRP has topped. You want to take your profits, and look, look at where we are right now. Right. So if I'm looking at this weekly right here, XRP is not bullish. All right, guys, when we are bullish, the price stays above these EMAs. All right, look at when XRP is bullish. Pullbacks, we tend to respect the 21. If we go lower, the 50. All right, these are pullbacks. Like pullbacks, they don't come into areas like this where you're spending weeks and months trading below your most important moving averages. Like that is just not bullish, not at all. All right. So if I'm looking at XRP, excuse me, this gave us a high right here, a lower high. Right now, the most important price is the current weekly support right here around like $1.77. Once you lose $1.77, look, I know you guys, you don't want to hear this, but you don't really have support anywhere in here, guys. And I'm talking about between like 70 cents up to $1.70. Yo, it is a straight line. All right. You see how we ran all the way up without, some sort of a pullbacks on this weekly. Yo, the drop is probably going to be exactly the same. So XRP, in my opinion, you don't get any sort of price bounce until on the weekly until price is around 92 cents. And once you go below 92 cents, which I think is more likely, I mean, guys, I know you don't want to hear this, but this is the range, man. Like you're talking about the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, like that. Those are your targets. And if you think about what that looks like, from 196, which is where we are right now, to 95 cents, that's a 50% drop. And if we come all the way down into this box, look, this is almost an 80% drop. Now, don't get caught up in, potential 80% drop. Just focus on the trend of the market. Whether we drop 50 or 80%, who cares? What you want to do is you want to make sure you are not in a position in something that could potentially, remember, it is potentially because this is a game of probabilities. All right. My targets are not guaranteed. Like those are just potential targets. But you don't want to be in anything that could potentially go down 80 or 50%. Like that is not a good, it's not a good place to be. So if I'm looking at XRP on this daily, look, this was a fake out. Price is exactly where you thought it was going to be if you were bearish on the price. And this is your last support right here. And then you're looking, below $1. All right, if you go to the monthly, all right, this is the monthly right here. This is not looking good. Every time we've came back to retest the monthly 21 moving average, we lost it. Every single time XRP came down to the 21 monthly moving average, we have lost it. Now, one time did we get a bounce that was sustainable. Right here, came back to the 21. We lost it. We ended up going all the way down to 30 cents. The 21 monthly was around 73 cents. Right back here. All right, came back to retest it. We lost it. Ended up going from 46 cents all the way down to around 10 cents. So chances are we are going to lose, or we actually already lost it. Chances are we are going all the way down. All right, XMR. XMR USD. Now, this one is very bullish on the monthly. This one, this is a big pullback, though. I was not expecting this much of a pullback, to be very honest with you guys. XMR is very bullish. You go to the weekly, that means we are looking for pullbacks as opportunities to buy. If I'm looking at this weekly pullback, all right, this is our first, not our first actually. It's very inconsistent in terms of, the color of these candles. Normally when you have a beautiful up move, you just get some beautiful green candles. And normally when you get like a big pullback, the red candles are very conservative, very consecutively. So right now on the weekly, in terms of where are we looking at for support, well, the first one was basically $500, or you can come right here. So basically, I'm just looking at this range right here. All right, this is an area of support. Now, do we know if the low is in based on this weekly candle? Absolutely not. We might, use some help by going down into the lower time. Now, looking at the daily, the price of XMR has already retested the 50 daily moving average. So to me, there's a very good chance we have put in a low of this pullback. Yes, it was a big pullback. You go from the top, go from here all the way down here. This is a 40% pullback. I am saying that we have probably put in a low of this pullback because in an uptrend, we tend to stay above the 2 EMAs on the daily. So if you go all the way back, guys, starting from around September 2025, around $278, XMR has maintained a pullback that bounced off the 50 daily moving average. Now, one time did we sustainably trade it below the 50 daily moving average since September of 2025. So chances are the pullback has finally, or is finally ending, and we could soon begin a brand new uptrend. Now, we don't have that uptrend yet, but if I go down to the lower time, and I'm on the 4 hour right now. If I put a trend line right here, all right, so in case you guys are wondering, this is a beautiful trend line. If price breaks above $560, I think you want to be a buyer right here. All right, you want to be a buyer right here. Okay, or if we go to the 1 hour, if you want to get an early entry, actually, yeah, I think right here, to me, I will be patient until price goes above 560. 560, you might get something like this. You might get something like this, and then you get a pullback, and then price runs higher. Doesn't matter what happens right here. Now our invalidation is going to be below these lows right here. So whatever pullback we get, price must not go below. What is the price target? Price must not go below $478. All right, but I would definitely be a buyer right here. Or you can wait for, if you want to do something like this, or you can wait for a pullback here. You can wait for this pullback. I don't know where this pullback is taking us. I don't know. Look, or you can wait for this pullback. Let's say this pullback brings us to 506. But I would be a buyer here, to be honest with you guys. Like I feel like getting in right here is good. And then, you keep your eyes on this breakout right here All right, but if you're getting in right here, just put your stop loss below, 478. Yeah, this is a good trade. 10% loss. And in terms of like where are the targets? Look, I think XMR is more likely heading back to around $800. All right, this is the only project where I feel comfortable in buying the dip. Like I think we'll go back. Look, even if we don't go back to $800, I think 718 is doable. So if this is an entry, let's talk about this one from a trading perspective. Profit, you're looking at 35. The risk, you're looking at 10. This is a really good trade. I absolutely like it. Yeah, so major resistance is this trend line right here. Once we get above it, we are gone basically. If I'm looking at like if you put a trend line right here, you can clearly see this was an opportunity to load up. And coincidentally, you go to the daily, like that's your 50 daily moving average. Like, sometimes I don't want to say it's a coincidence, but it's right in front of you. All right, chat. Listen, appreciate you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the live stream. And just to summarize, I'm bearish on altcoins. There's only a few altcoins that look very interesting. XMR, very bullish. ICP chart looks very interesting. Rose, another one, chart looks very interesting. But you want to make sure you look for setups. Don't be a chaser. I believe Bitcoin has finally topped, and I think we are going into the $700 range, a $70,000 range, sometimes over the next couple of weeks. All right, I will see you guys next time.